I've seen all the core Jay and Silent Bob movies. Every movie that Jay and Silent Bob are in, I've seen them.
We're shoulder to shoulder in a post-COVID era, white-knuckling it. There's so many callbacks to other Kevin Smith films. Everyone would kind of laugh and then whisper to the person next to them, "What was that from?" "Oh, that's from Clicks 2. Remember the part that the oh, okay." And then
the annoying but always still funny Randall is really the heart of the film, and this movie's about.
Hey everybody, Dragon Movie Guy here. Welcome to the May movie ranking edition of the Dragon Movie Guy podcast. I'm your host, Dragon Movie Guy. Thank you for tuning in, whether it's on the live stream or on the replay or just listening on the podcast itself. Thank you for tuning in to listen to me talk about my favorite movies from the month of May 2023. And we're amending the definition of movies for May in this particular episode because I really want to have this particular guest on. I have been following his podcast for going on 6, 7, 8 months. He's had me on as a guest on his podcast in which he wasn't there. So it's, we're ships in the wind, sails passing ships in the middle of the night. So I finally have him here. We're going to talk about the movies we watched in May, shoehorning it in, but I want him as a guest. I want him that bad. Yes, I want him as a guest. So please welcome, first time on the show on the Dragon Movie Guy podcast for the May movie ranking, or in this case, the movies we watched in May. Please welcome of the Cinema 9 podcast, Michael Govier. Michael, welcome to Dragon Movie Guy. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me here. This is fun. It's exciting. I love movies. I like you. Now we're actually on a show together as opposed to passing each other in the night.
Sending Twitter messages at 3 a.m. and like, is he up? I hope. Click. So welcome. Thank you for coming on the show. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the Cinema 9 podcast?
The Cinema 9 podcast is a beautiful show featuring me and two of my old pals, Eric and Travis. Yeah, we're 40-something, early 40-something white guys talking about movies, but we love each other. And though we may not be unique, we are very passionate about our movie opinions, and we love talking about all kinds of film. And each week, we basically look at one film as a focus for about 45 minutes or to an hour. Does it hold up? Each week, someone picks a new movie, and that's basically how it works. And at the end of the show, we decide, does it hold up or not? We all give our spiels, and then we pick the next show next week with the film that will follow. It's a lot of fun. Cinema 9, it's good times.
The thing I loved about your show, too, is the fact that they're all at least 5 years old or older. They kind of follow the Baseball Hall of Fame rule, where it's, it's got to be 5 years. You got to retire, and then we'll lift your jersey up into the rafters and send you to the Hall of Fame. But you got to wait 5 years. You got to have a little reflection on it. So I love the fact that you guys reflect, ruminate, and then go back and do the rewatch. What's your favorite movie that you've done a rewatch on Cinema 9?
Oh, wow. That is really hard because we've done so many. We've done 161 movies, and there are so many examples of movies that I really enjoyed going back to see or just wanted to revisit again because it was fun. I love that movie. I want to talk about it again with my friends. That's what we do sometimes. It's not all just critical eye, but I guess the one that I really enjoyed visiting the most probably be, I think, The End of the Tour, which is a 2015 film with Jesse Eisenberg and Jason Segel. Really liked that movie, and I like talking about the philosophies behind the characters. It's based on the final book tour. Well, not the final, but a book tour with the legendary author who's now been gone for a long time, David Foster Wallace. And it's a really interesting film that's basically like two people talking in 1996 while they smoke cigarettes like crazy. And it just takes me back.
Sorry, never did smoke a cigarette except once or twice in college. But yeah,
what really?
The funny thing is, I've never been a smoker. It doesn't sound like it in my voice right now.
I'm not a smoker either.
But never heard of that movie. What's the name of the movie again?
The End of the Tour. The End of the Tour. Two guys, and Dave. One of them is an actual writer for Rolling Stone who interviews David Foster Wallace. So it really did take place based on these audio tapes that this other guy named David had, named David Lipsky. And then he presents it all and wrote a book about his experience of being on that book tour with David Foster Wallace.
I love two-handers. I love indie films, and I love Jason Segel and Michael Cera. So the fact that I haven't heard of that movie, that gives me something now to watch again.
Maybe his best. Maybe like Jason Segel at his best. Maybe his finest performance ever, for real. I'm not kidding.
Even better than I Love You, Man.
I Love You, Man. I love Forgetting Sarah Marshall, him in that movie as well. But I think in terms of a dramatic effort, I mean, there's a movie called Jeff Who Lives at Home, I think it's called, that he did with Ed Helms.
And Susan Sarandon, I think, too.
Susan Sarandon, that's right, yeah. Who showed his dramatic chops there. But to me, in the end of the tour, he embodies David Foster Wallace. Whether you like David Foster Wallace or not, or ever read his 1,000-page opus, Infinite Jest, that doesn't matter. It's just a really, really well done effort on his part to show another side of his acting chops. So strongly recommend the end of the tour.
So it's David Foster Wallace, not Charles Foster Kane?
That yeah. That's good. That's real good. Movies that I watch now, I'm glad that he amended this, by the way. Thank you for doing that, because I try to stay up on watching current things, but you don't always get to do that, and whatever you watch during the month is what you watch. So you're going to get what I watched in the month of May, and that's just the way it is. So starting off with number 5, To Leslie. To Leslie is a film that was a big deal at the Oscars because of the buzz, Andrea Riseborough's performance, and some of the controversy, by the way, about how that buzz took place, supposedly because people were pushing it in the industry because there was a big party where the movie was watched, and then all these people in the industry were backing Andrea Riseborough.
I believe it was like a party that Gwyneth Paltrow threw, like her friends, like you or I would do if we had a friend that put out a movie. They did a watch party, and they spread the word of mouth because they're all Hollywood bigwigs. And I don't know how that is against the rules to say, hey, my friend did this great film, you should check it out. But yeah, there was controversy there for some reason. So yeah.
But I bet much worse things have happened with that. I mean, a guy named Harvey Weinstein once was the king of bullying people around to get his movies into Oscar contention to win awards. So I'm just saying, Shakespeare in Love, 1998, that did happen. At any rate, To Leslie is a honest look at addiction, and I appreciate it because it's not just about addiction. It's about how people can be put into extraordinary circumstances. The typical ordinary person put into an extraordinary circumstance. And without giving it away, I will tell you that there's so much to this movie that is typical, but also repetitive, like addicts making the same mistakes again and again. And Riseborough's great. Andrew Riseborough does a great job in this film. A lot of people talk about Mark Maron's performance in this. That was something because people love Mark Maron. He's got a huge podcast. He's had a whole new life after his first comedic life didn't really work out. But the man that he is now with the WTF podcast, who Mark Maron is now as an actor, is legit. Being in Glow and seeing him in film now, this movie was a solid effort on his part. And it was familiar territory for him because he knows a lot about addiction behavior himself. So I'd say To Leslie, it's the 5th of the 5 I chose to recommend or offer this week for this month of May that I watch movies, but it's still good. It's a solid film.
In fact, of all of the lists of great podcasts out there, Mark Maron's WTF podcast is one of the greatest out there. And I would love to come on as a guest.
Placating. Don't placate me like I'm your mother, boy.
Well, would you be willing to go on Mark Maron's WTF podcast as a guest?
Only if I could find the time, and maybe if I could squeeze it in. No guarantees. Okay, I'm a busy guy.
That's true. So what was good about Andrea Riseborough's performance in this film? Because I still haven't seen it. Apparently, it's on Netflix now. But everyone was talking about it for a while, and apparently it's a great performance.
She just is emoting the pain of what it's like to be completely dismissed after you've pissed everybody off that through your behaviors and antics that are sick of it. And she's willing to go the distance with the character in that respect where nobody can stand her anymore, but she's not done. She's going to keep going. So actually, it's a really well-written character. She does a solid job, like as someone who's facing addiction, but it's I guess it's not the greatest addiction performance I've ever seen. It's good, But when you're facing addiction, all you're doing is trying to emote a pain that you can't seem to let go of because you've learned a behavior that is consistently numbing you up. And she's an alcoholic in this movie. That's really her big issue. And she also has a son. There's something going on there. I'll just leave it at that. But with her son and how she tries to be a parent, but at the same time is completely just off the rails with no responsibility for her own life. So how could she be responsible for someone else's life, especially her son? The way that Riseborough emotes that and expresses it and plays through the character in that way, and how you see the arc of the character kind of come to not full circle, but to a new conclusion later and towards the end of the film, I think is kudos to Riseborough. It is, but it's not the greatest performance ever for an addict on camera, but it's solid.
I've heard good things, and I still need to watch it. I loved her in the Tom Cruise sci-fi movie where she's the Are You an Effective Team? The white bubble ships, and Tom Cruise goes out, and Morgan Freeman's in it, and she plays the woman back at the... Anyway, Olga Kurylenko, who was in Black Widow, was the love interest, and she plays the attractive woman at the big base where Tom Cruise goes back to at the night. So
you know how many Tom Cruise sci-fi movies there are? Like, there's so many.
This is true. This is true. And Morgan Freeman has a weird beard in it. But anyway, that's the only other place I've seen Andrea Riseborough that I know of. So worth watching? Yes or no?
Yeah, it's worth watching. It's dry. It's dry and it's slow and it's predictable in a way, but it's worth watching.
Gotcha. Confess, Fletch. Confess.
What's with this title, by the way? What do you think of when you see this title? Is it weird to say?
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like Jim Gray wanting Pete Rose to apologize. Confess, Pete. Just apologize. Show contrition. We'll let you in the Hall of Fame. Okay, fine. Yeah. I did it. Now we're never letting you in the Hall of Fame. I get a Jim Gray vibe when I see Confess, Fletch. Confess, Fletch. Confess.
Hey. It's a strange title, I must say that, but apparently that was the name of the book. You know, Fletch is a series of books. A lot of people know Fletch because of Chevy Chase and his performance as Fletch, and then Fletch Lives, the sequel. But they apparently wanted nothing to do with this. So Fletch Lives stars John Hamm as Fletch, and it's completely different Fletch, but it's not. He's still a wisecracking smart aleck to the max, so that part hasn't changed. And I was really dubious of that because I love Fletch. You know, it was a great film. It's a lot of fun. Tim Matheson and some intrigue and a lot of laughs and plenty of Laker jokes. There's more Laker jokes in this one too. Lakers versus Celtics for you people who want to fight that out still. That's in this movie. But, you know, John Hamm won me over. Initially, I was like, oh, boy, I don't know. Is this going to fly? For the first 15 minutes or so, I see that he's got to try to overcome the Chevy Chase, persona and the mystique of being known as Fletch. And Chevy Chase is a very particular kind of actor, right? So I was dubious that it would happen, but Hamm won me over. By the end of the film, I was like, oh, nice job. Way to go. You pulled it off, John Hamm.
I was kind of surprised when I heard that they were going to make a Fletch remake, because Ryan Reynolds has been doing a constant Chevy Chase impersonation for the last 20 years. And it's part of the reason why I love Ryan Reynolds, and the fact that no one talks about Ryan Reynolds doing a Chevy Chase impersonation in plain sight the entire time. So the fact that we're doing a Fletch remake, well, and they've made a Vacation remake, and neither one of them had Ryan Reynolds in it. So how was John Hamm up to the comedic chops of standing up to a Hollywood legend in Chevy Chase?
Yeah, he actually was. Like I said, I was a little suspect of it, but he won me over and he stayed the course. He was the same character throughout, and I'd like, oh, you're just like the super handsome guy, and now you want to be funny. But I was impressed. I remember John Hamm in Bridesmaids. It was a smaller role, but he was really funny in that movie. And when he has the opportunity to do comedy, John Hamm can do it. This is a brand new Fletch. It's not a continuation. You know, it's just like a whole new Fletch story. So there's no even winking, let alone an Easter egg for like the past Fletch movies. Really, they just left that in the past. And this is directed by Greg Mottola, who I really like. Greg Mottola, Adventureland, what a movie I love. I love Adventureland. Greg Mottola has a up and down career if you look at his IMDb as a director, but this movie got totally dismissed and ignored and abandoned by the studio because I guess they felt like, this is going to be trash, and instead of marketing it and spending all these millions of dollars and still losing him. Let's just dump it out there and then put it right on Amazon. And that was it. So this movie got totally screwed. This movie is much better than the respect that it wasn't given. It deserves a lot more respect.
Adventureland, a film with Ryan Reynolds. Small role, but
yeah,
great in
He's
the
great
role.
In that one.
Yeah. So worth watching, yay or nay?
Absolutely. If you did not see Confess Fletch and you missed it, go watch Confess Fletch. I'm telling you, not only is it entertaining, but it's like a really good mystery too. It's not cheesy. It's not lame. It's well done. It doesn't go over the top on the tropes. It's not like for people who say things that everything's getting shoved in, like too woke, quote unquote, like, oh, there's always got to be an agenda for a film. It does a nice balance of like having representation of all people without forcing it upon you in a way. I really like that about the film. I was like, oh, this is a nice balance. We can represent everybody on film and everybody can have a role, but we can do it in a way that's not contrived. So I really like Confess Fletch and I recommend it.
So is it representation, but not constant calling attention to, look at how diverse we are. We're representing. Yes. It's just sort of like, build it into the story. There it is.
Yeah, exactly. In a natural, well, I think a less patronizing way. It's more honest and legitimate. So I like the movie for that. I do.
Nice. And not condescending, I guess, too, is what it sounds like, too, as far as the
I mean, Fletch is condescending the whole movie, but yes, you're right. Yeah.
The filmmaking in this case. Sounds
that's
like
correct.
Nice. Fast X. Now, I got to clarify, I usually watch a lot more movies than I have been the last month or two. I've been spending a lot of time getting the Dragon Movie Guy podcast, ding, up and running, so I haven't been watching my usual 2 to 3 movies per week. Now it's more like 1 movie a week, so I don't have as many movies for the month of May to choose from. Therefore, Fast X, or Fast 10, Roman numerals, and they go through Rome in this film, the 11th Fast and Furious film in the franchise. This is not a good film, and none of the Fast and Furious films are particularly, they're not Oscar worthy, but they are at their best a lot of fun, and they're all about family. And they're usually a ton of fun, and there is a great sequence in this film. There is the second best rolling boulder type scene I've ever seen in cinema. Obviously, the best one being Raiders of the Lost Ark. This one is better than the one from The Lost World, Jurassic Park 2, the one where the 76 ball goes rolling through San Diego. That one sucked. Raiders is the all-time greatest. This one is not quite Raiders good, but it's definitely a solid number 2, which is sort of how I react to this film as a whole. A solid number 2. This film is just so... It doesn't solve anything. There's not even a good barbecue family moment at the end of the film. It just sort of puts a bookmark in, which is some of the laziest filmmaking I've seen since Hunger Games Part 3 going into 4. They do the same thing where they're going to end the series and we're going to do 2 films at once. So they literally just put a bookmark at the end of Hunger Games 3. That's basically what they did here. They didn't wrap up one of the 3 major storylines. They just, family, roll credits. So it's I gave this movie, I gave it a 61 out of 100. So 3 stars for me is 60 out of 100, and it's sort of like the minimum required score for me to recommend a film to go see it. I have 61 out of 100 on this film, and I did this score right after I saw it, so I'm sticking by that. But as this film has aged the last couple of weeks, my opinion of Fast X goes down by the day. So 61 out of 100. I was probably reacting to some fun action scenes, but I would not put it in the go watch it category. It is a stinker, and it is my number 5 movie of the month of May. You haven't seen Fast X yet?
No, yeah, I got no interest in those movies. I saw the first one when somebody picked it as a guest on Cinema 9 early last year. So I've only seen the original, and that's it.
I love the Justin Lin sort of renaissance with Fast and Furious. Like, I love Fast 4, Fast 5, 6, and 7. Fast 7 was the last one with Paul Walker when he passed away during production. And all 4 of those films are brilliant. They're great action films. They all escalate a little bit. The last couple of films haven't been as good. And I think with Fast X, we're really seeing the law of diminishing returns in prime effect. And it's one of those things where in order to have a comeback, you got to go away. Sadly, it's time for them to go away. When you have as many celebrities shoehorned into this film as they do, it gets a little crowded, and I love all the celebrities that are in it. I love the concept of it, but heck, they went to space in a Fiero in Fast 9. Fast 10 can't top that. And not that Fast 9 was any good either. So, yeah, when you go to space in a Fiero in the last movie, and it was a duct taped Fiero at that. I would say skip, Fast X. Are You There, God? It is me, Margaret. This is the Judy Blume novel adaptation. I never read the book when I was a kid, but everyone knew the name Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Everyone knew who Judy Blume was. It was one of those ubiquitous author names of elementary school, of junior high, not really of high school. But the film is actually surprisingly good. I actually liked this film. I love coming of age stories. This is a film that's set in 1970s, so it's a little bit a while ago now, but it's still, while they have the 70s clothes and the 70s fashion and hairstyles, it is very suburban, it is very American, it is very middle class kind of a thing, which is very familiar to me. I grew up middle class kid in the suburbs, so that is very familiar. The kids cast in this film is really talented. The girl sort of playing her best friend / future mean girl thinks she has life all figured out at 12, and Margaret kind of looks up to her a little bit. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but it is a good film. It does have a little bit of melodrama right at the very peak, but a very talented child cast. Rachel McAdams as the mom does a great job. Kathy Bates, who doesn't love Kathy Bates in a grandma / being sassy role? And Kathy Bates is sassy to the max in this film. I actually gave this film a 67 out of 100. I don't know why it's only 6 points more than Fast X. It is a much better film than that, but that is my score. I stand by it. It is a super solid film from beginning to end. Great production value. The only thing is the dad, and I'm sure this probably reflects the book, and I've never read the book. The dad is just not in it very much. Coming of age and the pains of growing up. So it's probably good that for the convenience of the storytelling that the dad is a little bit absent and a workaholic. So it's Rachel McAdams adjusting to life in the suburbs anyway, it's a good film. It's worth watching. And it is my number 4 movie for the month of May. Did you ever read any Judy Blume books growing up or read Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret?
I definitely read Super Fudge. Is that Judy Blume?
Yes.
Yeah, I read Super Fudge and the Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. So, those two. That's the ones I can remember, but I never read this one in particular. Also, this was directed by Elizabeth Banks.
Yep.
Is that right?
No, this is directed by. Oh shoot! No, Elizabeth Banks directed Cocaine Bear. This is directed. This is directed by the lady who directed Age of 17 with Haley Steinfeld. I'm blanking on her name because it's been a couple weeks since I've seen it, but good film. She did a great job as director. She's also one of the co-screenwriters on the film. But yeah, so
Kelly Freeman Craig.
That's it. Yeah, she does she does a very great job taking you back to those coming of age moments. And I've never been a 12-year-old girl, 13-year-old girl, but it takes,
can't do it over again.
Adolescence is, it's one of those things we all go through, and it's not an easy time. So she does a good job recreating the anxiety and the unsureness of it all, and the strange things that we all go through as we're growing up. She does a great job recreating that emotional space. I do think that they do the year in the life of thing, which we have so many great streaming shows now. I think this might have been a better streaming show with the story they wanted to tell, sort of like with the movie Coda. Coda was a year in the life of, and it won Best Picture. So how can you say it should be a streaming show instead of a movie? Well, the nature of the story they were telling was a year in the life of, and I think that leads better to do a streaming show for 10 or 12 or 20 episodes in a year in the life of, because it lets a lot of the storylines develop a little bit more and not have to fit within an hour and a half film. But it's a good film. It's definitely worth watching, and it gets you in the feels. It's melodramatic at the peak, but it does get you in the feels a little bit. And yeah, Kelly Freeman Craig does a great job as director and co-screenwriter. Your number 3 film for the month of May is Air. This is Matt Damon. This is Ben Affleck back together again. and they're wearing Nikes.
It's a movie that's got a lot of run. There's been a lot of talk about it, a lot of buzz. It's an 80s extraordinaire film. Really takes you back in time. There's a huge, ridiculous amount of money spent on the soundtrack for this because it's just like all of these pop songs from the 80s inundates you. The movie starts with Dire Straits, Money for Nothing. So sets the tone for that mid 80s period. And you get all these flashes of various pop culture references of the time, commercials, and where's the beef and things like that. And I didn't need all that necessarily, but it does end up kind of reinforcing the period of the 80s. You're like, oh, well, this is a really 80s movie. So I think it actually does a job, even if I didn't think it was necessary.
I like that this is a Michael Jordan biopic without Michael Jordan. It's a biopic about his shoes. And we've been getting a ton of these biopics about products lately. I'm sure we're going to get an iPhone biopic at some point, but we got a BlackBerry biopic. I mean, heck, out right now is a biopic on Flamin' Hot Cheetos. So if you could have a biopic on Flamin' Hot Cheetos, yeah, it's streaming on Hulu/Disney Plus. It's actually directed by Eva Longoria, and it's her directorial debut. But yeah, it's a biopic about Flamin' Hot Cheetos. So if you're gonna do Flamin' Hot Cheetos biopic and Tetris biopics about consumer goods, why not do a biopic about one of the most successful basketball shoe brands of all time?
I put this movie at number 3 because it's good, but it's not the best one I saw of the month. And I give credit to Ben Affleck. Another, he knows how to put a movie together. He'll blow you away at times with The Town. That was really, really good. And then, Argo's a little bit overrated, I think. But when he organizes a film and he's clear-minded and focused, he knows exactly what to do. He's a professional director. He really is. And he's a professional actor, does a real good job playing Phil Knight, the founder, even if it is a little bit more over the top. And there's liberties taken with this film as well. It's not a retelling. Everything you see in this film is not what happened. Like the Jason Bateman character that's a real character. That guy, however, in real life was even younger, not older. And he was much bigger and unhealthy and like this really loud, brash guy. It's like the opposite of what you got from the Bateman character in Air, who I thought Bateman did a really good job. I always think Bateman just plays himself. I don't think he has a lot of range at all. I really don't. But I do like him still. He's still an enjoyable guy to watch film. In the end, I would say I would recommend Air because it's a time travel experience. Viola Davis does a real good job of playing Dolores Jordan, I think her name is, Michael Jordan's mother. And it's a movie worth watching for sure. It's a time capsule. Chris Tucker's in it, but he's there. You don't really get a lot out of it. I always want more from Chris Tucker. He's there, but it's not enough. And of course, Matt Damon finally learned the lesson from his other compatriots about just wearing fat suits instead of trying to lose 30 pounds or gain 50 pounds for a role like George Clooney did in Syriana. And then you get like in an accident and you hurt your back and it's not worth it. It's not worth it anymore. So good job. Solid movie. Solid.
You notice too, like if ever since George Clooney put on that weight for Syriana, his earlobes got bigger with all the actual weight gain that he did. So
really?
Yeah, I think he's probably had the earlobes tucked since then. I also, like you, I'm a huge Jason Bateman fan, but I don't like when Jason Bateman goes full Jason Bateman. Like he did that series that everyone who's a hardcore fan loves, where it's him and Will Arnett and everyone being ironic all the time. It's the rich family that lost all their money. It's
Arrested Development. Classic.
Yeah, that show it's Jason Bateman going full Jason Bateman. Brilliant cast, great concept, but it annoys the ever-living crap out of me. When Jason,
really? Oh my God, I love Arrested Development.
Because I love Jason Bateman, I love Jason Bateman going back to Silver Spoons where he's a guest star before his voice changed. Like, I've been a fan of Jason Bateman that long. But Jason Bateman going full Jason Bateman being kind of, dialed back a little bit, reel it back a little bit, and you get him in Hancock. Great in this film. He's dialed back a little bit. Great in small roles. But, I love him in this movie as well. And sort of an interesting thing. I live in Las Vegas. I've been in Las Vegas 15, 16 years. And I've heard the name of Matt Damon's character on the radio for like 15 years because he does sports gambling shows. So as you drive around, if you're a sports fan and you drive around Las Vegas, you're going to hear sports gambling shows. Hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm so-and-so. And so you just sort of hear their names willy-nilly. And so when I heard that they were going to make a Michael Jordan biopic film and starring Matt Damon, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I started looking through the credits. I'm like, why have I seen that name before? And I couldn't put the two together because, when you associate something with driving around on the radio and Matt Damon in a film, they're not exactly side by side. So I'm like, wait a minute. So Matt Damon's playing the guy who's doing the sports picks on the. Oh, that's interesting. So when you see the first scene of this film at Bishop Gorman High School, that is an actual high school here in Las Vegas, and it used to be at this old building in the older part of town, which is probably where they're trying to set this film in that first scene. Now they literally have a complex. It looks like a small private college out in the middle of the suburbs. But back then, it was like this really old building in the middle of nowhere. Like for example, Bishop Gorman football is like one of the top 2 or 3 ranked teams in the entire country every year. Like Snoop Dogg's son transferred from L.A. to play at Bishop Gorman High School. So that's the high school in which that first scene takes place. So Matt Damon's character is an actual real life guy. I've been hearing him on the radio for 15 years and didn't realize that Matt Damon was going to play him in a movie. 17 years in news, I never actually met this guy. That's got to be flattering to have Matt Damon play you, even if he is wearing a fat suit to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
What if someone was going to do the Michael Govier story as a film, who would you want playing you?
Oh boy, that's really tough. Can I get Viggo Mortensen?
Sure, why not? I love Viggo Mortensen.
James Spader?
Yeah, James Spader. It's another good one. Yeah, I haven't thought of this myself of who would actually play me, but
neither have I. I'm just throwing out names.
Yeah. Yeah. Leonardo DiCaprio. Why not?
Yeah, sure. No, he gets everything. I want someone middle of the road, a little more underrated, but is a real solid actor.
Yeah, Viggo Mortensen, great actor. Great at sweating on command too. Like getting at a Dutch angle and sweating on command and whoops, con. Love Viggo. Yeah, love Viggo Mortensen. So,
yes.
Would you say that this is a see it or skip?
Yeah, I think it's worth seeing. Like I said, it's a time capsule, and it's definitely a one-off experience that you should see. It actually might have more repeat watchability down the road here, now that I think about it. So if it's worth seeing once, and I'm saying it's worth seeing again, yeah, see it.
And have you ever worn a pair of Air Jordans?
Never once in my life. I'm not against it. I'm not a shoe person. I'm not one of those people. So I wear no socks as much as possible, which means I'm just trying to keep my feet cool because they sweat a lot and they stink. So I'm not wearing socks. I'm not wearing shoes. I'm trying to wear sandals and flip-flops all the time.
I saved up for about 6 months at my job in high school working at the movie theater, and I bought one pair of Air Jordans. They were, it was like 10 years in at that point. They were comfortable shoes, but they broke apart in like 3 or 4 months. So it was like $200 in the 90s for a pair of shoes, and the actual shoes like broke apart real darn quick. So comfortable, very comfortable. But yeah, not the longest lasting. So when they were saying, well, do you want performance or looks? And they went, yes. I went, well, they went for the looks category for sure.
Also I got the answer. I want Billy Crudup to play me. That's my final answer. So.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
The guy from Watchmen. Yeah, I like it.
That's right.
And I Am a Golden God.
Almost Famous, one of my favorite movies ever. Yep.
Love Almost Famous. Love him in that role. This is it's a weird one. I think for Tom Hanks, like I would expect Ed Asner, the late Ed Asner, to be in this role. I think persnickety when I see this role and I see this poster, which is a weird word, but persnickety. It's a persnickety Tom Hanks playing a character, a man called Otto. Tell me about a man called Otto.
Well, you saw like my show partner, Eric. He's like, why would I want curmudgeon Hanks? And yeah, you get that. Tom Hanks is a curmudgeon in this movie. This movie is filled with triggers for people who may have mental health challenges and are uncomfortable with certain types of things that make you uncomfortable, to say the least, when it comes to life or death situations. I don't want to give it away, but I really never mention that stuff. But for this movie, I do mention it because it's pretty hardcore. And it's about a guy who's struggling. And I've heard this from friends of ours because we talked about it on Cinema 9, and Travis reinforced this, my other partner, last week, about how it's like, yeah, it's got like the uh El Gran Torino feel. There's like a pissed off old angry guy, and someone's got to open up his heart type situation. But I I really liked it, Man Called Otto. I thought it was a really, it got me. It sucked me in, you know. I was like, oh, curmudgeon Hanks, what's his problem? You start to learn what the problems are, and then there's like really nice people around the neighborhood, and they're just trying to make a difference and be friendly. And it, to me, that kind of story is always going to stick with me because there are a lot of people who get consumed by their own pain and trauma, and they can't get away from it. But if you could just have someone shine a light on it, show you some love, show you some kindness, just some decency and some compassion, it can make a difference. It's a tired standard trope in a way, but it's true. And I like movies like that.
Yeah, I love Tom Hanks, and he's definitely playing against type in this role. The one thing I wish they would have talked about going into the film, because it is a trigger warning, but this is about a character who is trying to take his own life. And
Yeah.
the fact that that is a running theme and there's no real warning up front, I do think that that would have been good to get out there. And yeah, it's a bit of a spoiler, but the fact that it's a running theme throughout the film, I think it would have been more honest with the public and let people decide for themselves whether or not to actually watch this movie. Because it is triggering, because it is a very recurring theme. And I do wish they would have changed that part of the marketing a little bit to be a little bit more upfront about things and not just go, oh, he's a lovable, curmudgeonly guy. He's Ed Asner from Up. He's a lovable, bitter old man. You'll love him. You'll love Tom Hanks as Otto. He's trying to take his own life the entire film. I like the idea of Tom Hanks as Otto. Like, I do wish they would have been a little bit more honest with that part of it. But did that part of the storyline affect your liking or disliking of the film?
No, it didn't. It was a heartfelt film where people learn about each other only by having conversations. And it's also really good in the relationships with not just Otto, but his friends, and how these little silly, meaningless disagreements can turn into years long, decades long battles that just stick in people's craws forever. It's so absurd, but it happens all the time. So I enjoyed that part of this movie. Yes, it's intense in a way, but it's also funny. It's also very heart wrenching, and you'll probably cry if you have feelings. But I recommend A Man Named Otto. I really do. I think it's a movie worth seeing. It's also based on a book and a foreign version that was originally done. I think it was German, and then this is the American version of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the storytelling was so well done in this film, and they do an amazing job of, on a very low budget, showing the passage of time. And whether it's some of the things they do to show the passage of time, but also with a relatively small cast, a relatively small budget, the sets, they don't really have a ton of locations and set shooting. So the economy of cinema and the storytelling and showing the passage of time on a limited budget, I thought they did a phenomenal job of doing. And Tom Hanks, there's never been a role that Tom Hanks has done that I haven't liked, because he brings it all to every film that he does. I mean, not every film is the greatest film. I don't think this is his best role or best work or best film by any stretch. But I like this film too. It was a bit triggering, but it also was a very heartfelt story about growing old. Right? It is about a man called Otto, and I agree with you. It is worth watching, but just with that caveat of knowing that the subject matter is there. Be aware of it going in when you're going to see it. But it's worth watching.
Yep.
My number 3 movie for the month of May was what I was really, really looking forward to. This is The Machine. This is the supposed real-life stand-up comedy act by Bert Kreischer that inspired the movie Van Wilder. This is Bert Kreischer, who's roughly our age, who was in college in the 90s, was a bit of a party guy. I guess a bit of a party guy is a bit of an understatement, and he built a stand-up comedy career based off of talking about his time in college, partying and drinking in Russia with the Russian mob. And in this film, he's now, he's grown up, he's an adult, he has a daughter of his own. And for some reason, Mark Hamill is his dad. And if you see the trailers for The Machine, you think that it's all about Bert Kreischer, the Machine. And they show clips from his stand-up, and it's brilliant. And then you see the actual movie, and it's not exactly truth in advertising as to what the movie is really about. We see flashbacks of Bert Kreischer in the 90s by a different actor. We see him doing stuff nowadays. It is funny, and it's great to see a studio-level comedy again, but it is not a perfect film. I do say it's worth watching, but it's not exactly what you think it will be when you see the trailers for it. So just keep that in mind, that it is not Bert Kreischer beginning to end going full The Machine. It's kind of playing with and against it. And but it is good. It is well done. It is worth watching. Mark Hamill doing his routine as the Joker. Mark Hamill as the dad. If you're going to watch a movie about a stand-up comedian with his dad played by a famous actor from the 70s and 80s, I would say watch The Machine.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well said.
My score for The Machine was 67 out of 100. I have 3 films rated at 67 out of 100 for some reason, because I don't know. I had 67 on my mind apparently when I was scoring films. So of the 3 movies that I have with a 67 out of 100 ranking, this is the middle of those 2 films. So have you seen Bert Kreischer's stand-up routine? Have you seen The Machine routine?
I don't know what the hell you're talking about, man. I have no idea. I know who Bert Kreischer is. I know Bert Kreischer has a shirtless comedy act, and that's it, man. Everything else you said was gibberish to me. So I'll just take your word for it and move on.
He does at some point take his shirt off. He does do the shirtless fat guy routine. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it's worth waiting until it hits. Worth waiting until it hits streaming. Not necessarily worth watching in theaters, although they do have some cinematic stuff in there too. But it is funny. It's not as funny as I thought it would be, but it's a different film, and it's nice to see a studio level comedy coming back to theaters. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Third film in the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, the 31st film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the last film by James Gunn as director in the MCU before he takes over the DCEU or the DCU. Now they're rebranding it's actually a good film. It's all about family. There is Vin Diesel, but he's not saying family in this one. This one's all about family. This one centers more around Rocket Raccoon more than anything else. I don't want to give away spoilers out there, but it is a good heartfelt film. I do think they try a little bit too hard in places.
Ooh.
And there is, and you see the characters in the trailer, but there's a really weird thought experiment involving a Venn diagram and those characters that they show that are the animal characters. And I don't want to go, I know you haven't seen this film, so I don't want to go into that part of the spoiler territory, but it's one of those where you're like, well, this is kind of messed up in a lot of ways. But it's as far as the high evolutionary goals, Chukwudi Iwuji, the bad guy, he was in the James Gunn streaming show Peacemaker with John Cena. He was one of the characters in there. He plays the villain in this film, and he's okay, but it's a larger story about the Guardians. It's well worth watching. By now, it's still in theaters, but I would say wait until streaming. It is really visual, but ironically, it's visual in a way that you don't necessarily need to watch it in theaters. I think it works on a 47-inch TV at home in your living room. Yeah, save your money at this point. It is worth watching. But I liked Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Didn't love it. Of the 3 films, I would say, of the 3 Guardians films, I would say it's number 2. It's better than number 2, but nowhere near as good as the first Guardians film. But it's a good way to send off those characters. I gave it a 71 out of 100.
Hey, I cracked a 70 score.
Yeah, I think most people have it a lot higher than that, but I liked it. I didn't love it. I liked it, though. Which of the Guardians films is your favorite?
I like 2. I like 2. I'd like 2 more than 1. I do. I really do. And I do. I'm that guy. And I'm also not a huge Guardians guy, so I'm not the guy to go to as the expert. I think it was cool that these different characters came out and they were able to flesh out a a pocket in the MCU when it didn't really exist in the mainstream. Now it's created a whole new world. So I'm cool with that. I like James Gunn. I'm excited about what he's going to do with Superman and all the stuff going on. I'm sure you'll talk about this on one of your next shows. The Flash is out in theaters so today, and I really actually want to see that. James Gunn didn't direct it, but I'm just excited in a way, even though I really shouldn't be that excited about what DC's been doing. Guardians of the Galaxy is solid, but it's not my favorite stuff.
I saw The Flash at CinemaCon a month and a half ago, and it
Oh,
is
you
really,
did?
yeah. I got to go to CinemaCon.
I'm hearing good things, man.
Yeah, it is a really solid film. They had some working CGI in there in the screening that I saw at CinemaCon, but this was the screen. CinemaCon is the movie theater chain, so all of the AMC's, all of the Regals,
okay.
all those big and small chains coming to Las Vegas for a movie theater convention. So it's all of the studios showing all the theaters what movies are coming up and why they should put them in their screen. There was a almost full showing of The Flash. You could tell there was a few moments of working CGI in there, and they didn't show the credits, so that we didn't see the end credits or mid credits scenes if there are any. But it is really good.
Okay, look at that. It's really good. See?
Yeah, it's worth watching. Andy Muschietti's the director, so I'm not a huge Ezra Miller fan as the Flash or in general. He's a good, talented actor, but he did a good job in this film, so it's worth watching.
Very interesting. A lot of stuff to talk about there, but yeah, I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm probably going to hit the theaters for it. Looks like you go to the theaters every week, which is maybe I should start doing that again. I start going to the theater once a week and seeing a movie. That might be if I used to love going to the theater. I just never go anymore. So.
Well, and a lot of theaters now on Tuesday nights, if you're free Tuesday nights, a lot of theaters have discount movie night on Tuesday nights, so you can still go to the theater, $5-6, watch a first run movie, 4 or 5 days after it comes out on Friday, and have something to talk about on the channel. Have additional content. The content churn, if you will.
My sister-in-law.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law works at a movie theater, and I never take advantage of it. So that says a lot, I guess.
Well, then, if she works at the theater, you can go anytime.
I know.
Go see the movies. You run a movie channel. Watch the movies. Back to Guardians for a second. Of the 5 main Guardians characters, which is your favorite Guardians of the Galaxy character?
The other sister, the blue sister.
Oh, Nebula.
Yeah, Nebula. Thank you. It's either Nebula or Rocket Raccoon for me. So.
Nice. Yeah, love Karen Gillan in that role, and yeah, she's phenomenal. So many good characters to choose from too. Like who puts a talking tree into a film other than James Gunn? So
I love Groot, but it's just Groot. He's just there. Yeah. For me, I could give a crap about Dave Bautista. That's my least favorite. So.
Yeah, he's just Dave Bautista's. You know what Dave Bautista is to me? He's basically Paulie from the Rocky movies. He has a great dramatic arc in the first film, and he gets to be more and more of a punchline of a character as the films go along. Like Paulie in the first film is the glue that keeps Rocky and Adrian together, and by Rocky 3, he's just this hardcore alcoholic who's a punchline. And that's basically what they did with Drax. Like, my wife and daughter. That's
pretty good.
Yeah, my wife and daughter are dead in the first film. By the second film, he's just telling perverted jokes the entire film. It's just sort of
he's just playing off of what's her face, Antenna Head.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's how well versed I am in the Guardians. I can't remember their character names.
And well, hell, I mean, even Rocket Raccoon says the chick with the antenna when talking about her. So, So, anyways, that's my number 2 movie for the month of for the month of May. Before we get to our number 1 films, could you tell me about baseball? Your fantasy baseball.
I love fantasy baseball. I do a show. It's called the Palazzo Podcast, 2 L's, 2 Z's. And it's me and a rotating cast of kooky characters talking about baseball, having some laughs, but also informing people because they want to win money. Really, fantasy baseball is just code for gambling. That's all it is. And that's why people do it, because people love gambling. And if there's a way to cut corners and not work like a dog 80 hours a week, people are going to play fantasy baseball. So we have a lot of fun at Palazzo Podcast. We do it on YouTube. We do it in audio form. I also write articles for a website called ftnfantasy.com. It's totally free. You can check it out every Tuesday. But the Palazzo Podcast, a lot of fun. It's a good time. It's also a reference to The Naked Gun, the 1988 classic comedy. Hey, it's Enrico Palazzo. I actually called the show, hey, it's Enrico Palazzo Fantasy Baseball Podcast when I first started it. Now I've downsized it to Palazzo Podcast just for the alliteration, and it's a little easier to say.
Well, you could always come out to Las Vegas, too, because we have the Palazzo Casino. So you can do the Palazzo Podcast at the Palazzo Casino.
L.
Yeah.
1L. Yeah. I take a picture of it every time I go to Vegas every year because we have a baseball thing where I do fantasy baseball drafts. There's a whole thing every year. This last year was at Mirage, which is going away. Nice. So it was the last time they're doing it there. But yeah, I always take a picture of that.
Yeah, no Pete Davidson at the Mirage, just in Transformers, but
I'm not going to see that movie. That whole franchise is trash.
Yeah, it's better. You know, it's not as good as Bumblebee, but it's better than the last couple of ones.
I'm sure it's not terrible. It'll probably be slightly better because there's so many mistakes have been made, but I'm just so turned off by it. I don't want to see. I'll just watch old cartoons and I'll just leave it in the past.
And look, let's be honest. There's a return of the Skybeam, so just be forewarned if you do watch it. There is a Skybeam involved, but
all right. I also mentioned I do a show called The First Day Pod with my wife, which is about life and trying to learn about things and try to be better people if we can, which is something everybody should try to do if they can at least try to do it. And another show I do, last one is It Safe? Now, Is It Safe is a show that I've done. We've done 105 episodes, so we've been around for a little bit, but it's just a podcast, no video at all, which I think is hearsay in 2023. I know, but it's the only show where it's just a podcast only. Is it safe with a question mark? Me and two old friends, again, two different old friends. We talk about life. We talk about whatever the hell we want. It's a lot of fun. We could talk about music. What's our favorite hair metal bands of the 80s? What was the best album in the 90s? We could talk about the dumbest thing that ever happened to us when we were in high school. Anything can happen on Is It Safe? It's my most freeform show, and I really enjoy doing that.
It is that friend group from high school. You feel like you're friends already because you have the running inside jokes, but it's not so inside that you can't catch in on what you're talking about. So yeah, so it's Travis and Eric and Michael Govier, Cinema 9 podcast, Cinema 9.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah. Very nice of you.
Trying to learn cues and promo things. So yes, Cinema 9 podcast. Yes. Look at me growing, blossoming, if you will, as I do weird hand wavy things. I am a huge fan of the filmmaker, huge fan of this film. Tell me about Clerks 3.
Clerks 3 is a movie that'll sneak up on you. I watched it the first time and I was like, this is what's going on? It was a little bit confusing for me, especially someone who loves Kevin Smith's movies like yourself. I'm a big fan. Love the View Askew universe. I grew up on it. I always will be. There's been some duds in the mix, but I'll say this. I loved Clerks 2 more than I loved the first Clerks. For me, I thought Clerks 2 was a stunning achievement that I couldn't believe how funny it was. It was really funny. So Clerks 3 now, another 15 years later, I watched it a couple more times. And after watching it a few more times, it really has hit me. And I was moved by the film. It's a very, very goofy film that doesn't follow a pattern. It's not like a classically troped film. It's got the classic crap, or not crap, but the BS that you get from a Kevin Smith movie where there's just people standing around doing nothing, talking about all types of inane stuff that is funny. Those are some of the funnier parts of the movie. But the relationship between Dante here with the annoying, but always still funny, Randall, still got it, still like it, is really the heart of the film. And this movie's about life, the progression of life, our friendships, our loved ones, how we mature. And this movie's really about how we let people down when we don't have the means to help the people we want to help. We do care, but we're not equipped, or we feel inept in our ability to offer assistance, compassion, and care. So we just kind of are there, and time goes by. Next thing you know, you got some regrets. So this movie's very deep in a way. It is. And you have to go along the journey from Clerks to now. It's very meta as well, a super meta film. A lot of jokes on top of itself. It's all crumbling inside of itself. It's so meta. And I like that. I liked all that stuff about it. That's why I put it as my top movie for the month of May. I really think Clerks 3 is a movie that grows on you. And if you've never been involved in the universe, it might not be, it'd be interesting for you to just walk in and watch Clerks 3 if you never saw any of the other Clerks or you never saw any other Kevin Smith film. I'd be curious to see what people like that thought of it. But for me, as someone who's been born and raised on these movies, it was really, really good.
So have you seen every Kevin Smith film that he's directed? I think there's one or two that I've missed somewhere, but
I don't think I've seen Tusk. I haven't seen Tusk. I never saw Jersey Girl. I never actually watched it. So.
It's actually not bad. If you're a completist, if you want to watch all of the Kevin Smith movies, it is worth.
I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't want to see those movies. I've seen all the core Jay and Silent Bob movies. Every movie that Jay and Silent Bob are in, I've seen them. I've seen Yoga Hosers. I've seen a lot of his movies. Those are like the only two I haven't seen.
Well, and if you liked Yoga Hosers, the Harley Quinn and Johnny Depp's daughter, who's in
Lily Rose.
Yeah, Lily Rose. Those characters
a big show right now. Icon.
Yes,
a big whiff for some people. But anyways, that's a different.
Yeah, it's a triggering show as well. But Lily Rose Depp is also those two characters are introduced in Tusk. And what's interesting about Tusk is that it was based entirely of Kevin Smith's podcast. Like, literally, they were just kind of going back and forth, like you and I are going back and forth, and they were just kind of riffing on horror films. And through the riffing on horror films, they came up with the idea for Tusk. So it is, it's not your average Kevin Smith film. It's more of a suspense thriller horror film, but it's got Haley Joel Osment, it's got Justin Long, and it's got the cameo from Harley Quinn Smith and Lily Rose Depp before Yoga Hosers. And it's a weird one, but it has that Kevin Smith indie feel to it. It's not in the View Askew universe. It's not produced by Scott Mosier. It is worth watching if you like horror suspense films. So I love all of the Kevin Smith universe. I saw Clerks in theaters. I was in high school and I had an old school movie theater in Shoreline, Washington, which is sort of like the first ring of, you get past the urban sprawl of Seattle proper and it's like suburbs. And so I went to an old single screen cinema art house in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the suburbs, and saw Clerks in theaters in an otherwise empty theater with sticky floors and everything. And fell in love with Kevin Smith at that moment in time, at that day. The story of how he made Clerks for $30,000 by maxing out credit cards, that, the free credit card offers everyone gets in magazines and mailers. That's how Kevin Smith financed Clerks. And you look back on Clerks 1 now, and yeah, you can see warts and all, and that's part of the appeal of it, ironically. But I love that he's built this entire universe. And you're right, for those of us that are the huge Kevin Smith fans, there are so many callbacks in Clerks 3. I went and saw Clerks 3 in theaters too, but what's interesting is the Clerks 3 screening that I saw was at a multiplex in the suburbs of Las Vegas here. And because it was a roadshow version, it was, it's all digital projectors now anyway, so all they had to do is download the picture. But because there was only the one showing, everyone in the showing for Clerks 3 that I saw last October, everyone was huge Kevin Smith fans. So what was funny is we're shoulder to shoulder in a post-COVID era, kind of white-knuckling it, and there's so many callbacks to other Kevin Smith films in Clerks 3 that everyone would kind of laugh and then whisper to the person next to them, "What was that from?" "Oh, that's from Clerks 2. Remember the part that oh, okay." And then the next callback happens, and everyone goes, "What was that? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, the 36 dick, yeah." So yeah, even for those of us that were in the theater watching this with a theater full of Kevin Smith fans, there are a ton of callbacks that even all of us in the Kevin Smith-ophile universe didn't catch everything. So yeah, I love this film. It's just, and for anyone that watched Too Fat for 40 or Too Fat to Fly, where he literally got kicked off a Southwest Airlines flight for being fat. a lot of
He
that
did.
kind of works its way into some of the storylines in this film. Don't want to give any away any
Yep.
spoilers here, but yeah, I agree with your choice. It is a great choice for a number one film.
Yay! All right.
What is your all time favorite Kevin Smith movie, by the way?
Probably Chasing Amy or Dogma, if I had to
Mm.
guess.
Yeah, great
I
flicks.
love Chasing Amy is a really good movie. It was Quentin Tarantino's favorite in '97. So
Really?
that says it really was. Yeah, it was his favorite movie in '97, which I think is cool because I respect his opinion as well. Not as just a legendary director, but he knows everything about film. But yeah, I love Dogma. I love Chasing Amy. I love Mallrats. That's fun too. I mean, I love all that stuff. Clerks 2 is really, really hilarious. But I guess I'm gonna stick with Chasing Amy. The Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, and then the reboot. There's some really funny jokes in the reboot. I got freaked out by Jason Mewes' nose in reboot. It was all messed up, like Artie Lang. It wasn't quite Artie Lang-esque, but it was messed up, like because he's been a drug addict and
Yeah.
something happened, man. But I got over that because it's stupid, and I actually have grown to like the reboot too, which also was the reason that Clerks 3 happened was because the DVD sales for the reboot, even though it was a total flop at the box office, was really, really successful. So they gave him enough money to do Clerks 3. So it all works out in the end.
And I love that Kevin Smith is now sort of in that middle chapter of his career to where, yeah, he's doing sequels, he's revisiting old characters, but at least he's not doing it because he has to do it. He's doing it when he has a story to tell. So many celebrities of all statuses save a sequel for when their career is failing and they need a hit. Even Francis Ford Coppola, Godfather 3 was born out of New York stories as a film failing at the box office. So they're like, we need a hit. He's like, well, okay, we could revisit Michael Corleone. They're like, great, Godfather 3. He's like, well, no, Godfather 3. We've got to market Godfather 3. So at least Kevin Smith, with his returning to the well, is waiting to have good stories to tell, letting enough time pass and not just doing it because he needs the money.
He does it because he's got something to say now, and he had a life-changing experience when he almost died. And so there's a lot going on there. And he's got a daughter that he's also trying to prop up a movie career for. Let's not lie about that either. But
And by the way, have you seen? There is a new documentary out called Chasing Amy. I have not seen it, but have you seen Chasing Amy?
no, not at all.
Apparently, it's about chasing Amy, and it's about the making of Chasing Amy.
Well, then I got to watch that ASAP. That's something I would be very interested in watching because Chasing Amy has now become a movie. It is filled with derogatory slang for homosexuals because but it was also very honest of that time. It's dated now for sure, but the way Banky in that movie talks, that's exactly how a guy that age from that world would talk because there's homophobes everywhere, but he's also not a homophobe. He's using language that is offensive to gay people in that movie, which is not cool, but it's also authentic of the time period. And I'm not one to litigate and justify history. Okay. I'm just a person living in the world, but I just appreciate when a script is authentic to how people really talk, even if it's not the words we want to hear. But at the same time, that movie is also very pro gay in that period where it was a little tougher to do. Yes, it's got this character who might be having his own feelings that are conflicted, but at the same time, it's a very pro gay movie. And I like that about Chasing Amy now, which I didn't even understand when I was younger because I was a young idiot. It just went, dick and fart jokes, like stuff like that. And they make fun of that in the movie as well. But Chasing Amy has actually got a pretty good legacy now, too. Not as just a good film, but in that essence as well.
Well, and when you're talking about acceptance by any group in culture, you got to go, if you're a filmmaker and you're trying to get acceptance in the wider culture, in some ways you have to have a character like Banky who's saying politically incorrect things as an entry point for people that are on that side of the fence to go on the journey of the character to ultimately end up at a place of acceptance. If you cut out all that kind of thing, I think it's harder to change minds and hearts.
Because it strikes deeper within communities that have those types of people where you could change hearts and minds instead of just telling them this is how it is. Movies have that power. That's what I love about film. I didn't mention earlier is that movies can actually change the way we think as a society for the most part, and it could reach people that movies can only reach because they're films and they have a broad reach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great and powerful tool that movies can still do, even if it's all streaming. It goes to everyone's living room, so it's still very powerful.
And it's a great story that isn't condescending. It isn't preaching to the choir, and it's
No,
not telling you how to
yeah.
think. It is telling a
Yeah.
story and taking you on a journey. So it's not beating you over the head with a bully pulpit.
It's not cheesy at all either. Yeah, it's not. It's a really good. I tell you, that's why it's my favorite. It really, I think it holds up quite well.
I definitely need to do a deep dive Kevin Smith rewatch at some point here. So
yeah, I'm starting to. I'm actually doing that like right now. So that's why I'm kind of I'm apropos to speak about it right now because I've rewatched Chasing Amy and I was actually watching Walmats last night and yeah, so I'm all on that right now.
I need to put that on the list. I'm in the middle of doing a DCEU deep dive rewatch right now. Like I literally just got done with Wonder Woman a couple nights ago. Yeah, it's a bit of a slog, but there's only 13 of them and there's only a couple left. So I want to have, relatively recently with the Flash being a big hit now and being out, I want to be able to do an honest to God rewatch review re-ranking. So.
You're a good host. That's right. See, he does the research, folks.
Trying to, at least. My number one movie for the month of May is The Little Mermaid. Go figure. I never saw the original Little Mermaid. The original Little Mermaid came out in 1989 when I was 14. So even though I worked at a movie theater from the time I was 16 till the time I was 22, 23 for about 7 years. My high school job was the movie theater for 7 years. I wasn't quite on the Van Wilder plan. And it didn't take me 7 years exactly, so college is in there somewhere too. But I love the Disney Renaissance, but The Little Mermaid, for whatever reason, comes after my childhood and before my high school teenage years. So
I saw it in the theater, so I'm just saying I saw that in the theater.
Oh,
because I was 9 years old. It was the same summer as Batman, I believe.
Yep.
So.
And it's one of those that I still, for whatever reason, haven't watched to this day. I mean, clearly I know Under the Sea. I know,
I never see.
Yeah, I know some of the songs, but and I'm familiar with the general outline of the story. So seeing this version in theaters, Halle Bailey as Ariel, she did a great job. Melissa McCarthy as Ursula. It's a really solid remake. Other than the CGI sea creatures being a little too photoreal and having zero expression on their faces because they're realistic lobsters or crabs or whatever. The actual story is pretty well told. I think it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. It's 135 minutes, and the original film was an hour and 23 minutes. So 83 minutes. I did the math. 52 minutes longer for the same story. And there's 3 new songs, but this film drags a little bit, even though it's the same story told from the same basic story, same basic themes, a lot of the same shots. Because, you see clips over the years. The music is amazing in this film. They definitely spent the money to get a full orchestra to do all the musical numbers. And Halle Bailey as a singer is phenomenal. And Halle Bailey as Ariel does the almost impossible task of threading the needle by singing in a Broadway style like the original film, but not doing a remake version of the singing performance from the original film. So she sings it in that Broadway style, so she's not making it her own, but she's also not trying to replicate the performance, which is, if you really think about that standard, like giving people what they want, but not just doing what they already know, that is a very hard standard to try and meet. And in my opinion, I think she does it. She does it across the board. As far as singing. Acting, she does a decent job, but it is my number one movie for the month of May. Not a perfect film, but I did give it 78 out of 100. And
wow.
People can see on the screen all the categories as to why I give it 78 out of 100 or 4 stars out of 5. You haven't seen The Little Mermaid yet. Any plans to watch The Little Mermaid at some point?
No, I haven't seen any of these Disney live action remakes at all.
I did really like Beauty and the Beast, though. I thought that was really good
it might be
with Emma Watson.
I just don't care. I have no interest at all.
It's a cash
There's
grab.
a lot of nostalgia for here. All these movies I saw, they're trying to hit me exactly because Aladdin and Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, these are all when I was younger. And Aladdin's a classic, and you would think I'd want to see that one, but I didn't even go see that, despite it being directed by Guy Ritchie, who I really like. So if I didn't go see that, I'm just not going to see any of these.
I love Aladdin and I love Guy Ritchie, but I was actually turned off by the fact that Guy Ritchie was directing the Aladdin remake. Like, of the Venn diagram of Disney movies and Robin Williams hits and Guy Ritchie Lock, Stock, and Two, I couldn't resolve the two in my head, and maybe that's on me.
I didn't see that one, I won't see any of them.
Yeah, and Will Smith trying to take over the role of Robin Williams. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's box office poison. He needs to go away for 10 years.
Yeah, and from the Academy, he is.
Really? Yeah. Yay! All right. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but Emancipation might have been a good movie. I didn't even see it.
And you know what's funny? When the slap happened, because Chris Rock was so animated with it, and they had done so many audience interaction things, when it first happened, those first moments, I actually thought it was a sketch.
So did I. So I saw this. I was watching it live. I saw it live like you did, and I'm like, oh man, this is a bit. Okay, wow.
Yeah. Then he goes back to his seat, and the fact that he didn't have a mic on, and you're hearing the room noise come in of him yelling.
Well, you hear that on the international feeds. You hear nothing on the American feed that I was watching. It's just silent for a while. I'm like, what's going on here? That's how you knew something was up.
Yeah, that was a wild Oscars, and to think
it's an all-time moment,
and to think that they want to do the Oscars with no host. Without host, we wouldn't have the slap. Darn it!
Yes, I will. That moment will never be topped in Oscars history. We thought, although I did say Warren Beatty moment with Moonlight, that got topped. So who knows? Maybe there's going to be a topping of the slap in 5-10 years.
Yeah, God, the Moonlight moment with Warren Beatty. That was one of those like, aw, Warren Beatty, Alzheimer's is setting in. Or
it was just like silly. It was a silly mistake, and it almost seemed like that was purposely done, but I guess it wasn't.
Yeah, it's true too. I did love though how he was trying to blame Faye Dunaway, like, well, you see it, don't you? And she was like, oh, you're out there on your own, Warren.
Good luck, buddy.
Yeah. So, thank you for coming on. Any other things you'd like to plug? Is there a sixth podcast that we don't know about yet? Is there?
That's it. I gave you all the news that's fit to print, my friend. That's it. Palazzo Podcast. Cinema 9, my buddies. We love movies. The one you need to know the most here is Cinema 9. We have a great time there. Me, Travis, and Eric. We did Natural Born Killers recently. We're doing The Crying Game next week. We did Princess Mononoke a few weeks back. That was another movie I'd never seen. So we're all over the map. We're doing The Player, Robert Altman, one of his classics that I'd never seen. A lot of movies I haven't seen recently that we're doing. We focus in on one movie, but we also like to share. It's not quite like this, a little less than depth, but we kind of talk about our quarantine viewing picks because it goes back to the COVID quarantine days. We first started the show, and we would share what we were just nonstop watching while we couldn't go anywhere. So that's where it all takes place. And these days we do a simpler, more brief version to start the show.
Love it. And I have not seen The Player myself, but Robert Altman's one of those filmmakers that I think I have not seen any of his movies that I'm aware of, but his name is out there, and it's one of those directors of the 60s, 70s, and 80s that I really need to revisit, I think, at some point, because his name always comes up, and you hear, oh, that one, amongst us cinephiles, those of us that are big movie fans that are, we start YouTube channels to talk about movies. Robert Altman's one of those guys that people will go, hey, remember that scene in Altman's blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, yes, I remember that scene. I'm the crowd from Clerks 3. Like, yes, I remember that scene. What scene was that from? That's me talking about Robert Altman. So,
you want to get your credentials as a movie buff. You really got to get your Altman, you got to get your Altman PhD, I guess.
Exactly. Got to get the Altman fix. Got to get the entry drug and the fix, and then go through all the Robert Altman.
Start with Badlands, 1973. I think that's a great place to start. Nice. That's a classic, and that if you liked a movie a few years ago called Mississippi Grind with Ryan Reynolds, by the way, and Ben Mendelsohn. This was directed by the directing team of. It's the husband and wife who did Captain Marvel. They did a movie called Mississippi Grind in 2015 with Ben Mendelsohn and Ryan Reynolds, which basically was kind of a reimagining of a classic Robert Altman film called California Split from 1974. So just a little bit of some
Nice.
Altman
And
stuff.
love those 70s films too. I recently, inspired by your guys' COVID viewing picks, I was going through the deep dive of Netflix, and I saw I've seen Citizen Kane, but I haven't seen a ton of Orson Welles' work. So I watched a documentary, which I'm forgetting the name of the documentary, but the documentary is about a great unreleased film of Orson Welles' called The Other Side of the Wind.
Oh.
And as I got done with the 2-hour documentary and like the great unreleased, because apparently he has like 6 or 7 unreleased films because he died middle production. He was on tour. They actually finished The Other Side of the Wind. So I watched the documentary back to back with The Other Side of the Wind, and not perfect cinema by any stretch because it's a largely incomplete film, but it's absolutely worth watching, and the documentary is freaking amazing. Definitely worth watching. So
all right, yeah,
watched that
check
like
that
a week
out.
ago. So that is my COVID viewing pick, stealing shamelessly from you and your IP.
Steal away,
Yeah.
please.
So
No shame here.
Michael Govier, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. I'll put all of your links, all the links that we brought up, and if you could send me the links, I'll put those in as well, and we'll put the links in the linkiverse in the video description. So, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being my guest. I will say thank you, and thank you everybody for watching and listening, and we will see you next time. See you, everybody.